for you. That's the power of the Most High. And it doesn't matter how much their words look like their swollen words mean something, or their words look like it, they the boss. When the Most High finish, they're going to be nothing. Because that's the power that the Most High have. Now we go on to chapter 8. Esther chapter 8. Esther's plea for her people. Verse 1 says, chapter 8, verse 1, on that day did King Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther, the queen. So everything he had, he gave it to Esther. And Mordecai came before the king. Look at that. For Esther had told what he was unto her. So this is his time now. The Most High just gave Mordecai a favor. He was a man of honor, a man of dignity. You didn't hear nothing about him sleeping around with all the women around Shushan Palace. And he was a man of dignity and honor. He was a very humble man, but he was also a very courageous man with strength that he was not going to defy his God and bow down to a man. Okay. Now, and the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. Look at that. All the power is being transferred to Esther and Mordecai now. And Esther spat yet again before the king and fell down at his feet and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. She's begging and pleading to the king that he would change this ordeal to annihilate the Jews. Now, verse 4 says, then the king held out the golden scepter towards Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king and said, if it please the king, and if I found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in the king's provinces. So she's pleading with him to change it. Let's see what happens. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? And how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindreds? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hung upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Because he laid his hand upon the Jews, to try to annihilate them by trying to come to the king to get it decreed. He said, write you also for the Jews, as you like to, as it liketh unto you, as it liketh you in the king's name. Like, I'm going to give you my permission, write it. And seal it with the king's ring for the writing which is written in the king's name. He was giving her authority, he said, and seal it with the king's ring. May no man reverse it. Now, this is the permission he's given her. There then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is, the month of Sivan, on the 3 and 20th day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants and the deputies and the rulers of the province which are from India unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writings and according to their language. So they're making it known everywhere, just like Haman did, evil Haman. So now Mordecai has become a ruler in the provinces. So he's sending the decree, that the permission that the king gave him and Esther, he's sending it everywhere. And he wrote in the king's Ahasuerus' name and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback and riders on mules and camels among the dromedaries. See, because the first decree had already went out. to annihilate the Jews. So now they had to send in every way they can. That's been overturned. Let's look at verse 11, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together and to stand for their life. See, he gave them permission to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and provinces that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for prey. Like, wipe them out. Fight for your life and wipe them out. Don't leave none alive if they're trying to kill you. Upon one day, verse 12, in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely, upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the what? The month of Adar. All right, that's why we're celebrating the Feast of Purim. The copy of the writing for the commandment to be given in every province was published unto all the people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So they wrote the decree for the Jews to fight for their lives. Verse 14, so the posts that rode upon mules, camels, and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandments, and the decree was given at Shushan palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel. Okay, this is the time to do it now. You got all the power. The Most High has lifted them up. So Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with the garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. They were glad. All praises to the Most High. They were glad. Verse 16, the Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor, and in every province and in every city, whether the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness and feasts and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. Yeah, they cleaving now. They was cleaving to the house of Jacob now. They was cleaving to Israel. They became Jews, okay? For the fear of the Jews. Because, see, our nation have power. Our nation, black people, so-called black people, we are very powerful people. And, of course, the Benjamites, which are the Jamaicans, of course, so-called Jamaicans, and Levites, the Haitians, so-called Haitian Levite, they are Levites. So-called Haitians are Levites. And all the other nations that's connected with the 12 tribes of Israel. All of the most people have power. Now you go into chapter 9, of course, it's the Feast of Purim right here being dedicated right here. Now in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them. The Jews was in charge now. Just like the Most High said this, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. That day is coming. Okay? He that killed with the sword must be killed with the sword. That day is coming. Those are prophecies that you can't get away with. Okay? Now, verse 2, the Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay on such as sought their hurt. They put hand on the people that sought their hurt. And no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all the people. Because if God before you, the Most High before you, who can be against you? And all the rulers of the provinces and lieutenants and the deputies and officers of the king, they helped the Jews. All of those that were in authority helped the Jews. Because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. Mordecai was a great, powerful man. He was giving orders. Wipe them out. Leave none alive. And that's what you do with your enemies. If they have already threatened your life, you have to really, deal with that. Mordecai, just like the Most High said in many of the scriptures, of course, in the Torah, when he was giving Moses and David and all of those patriarchs' commandments to wipe out certain nation and take the land. If they didn't, those people became pricks and thorns in their side. Now we go a little further here. It says, for Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Why? There was no sin in his life as well. That's the only way you can wax greater and greater, if there's no sin in your life and you're being totally obedient to the Most High. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughtered and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. You see? It didn't advance them in the end to hate the Jews. You know, to speak evil and plot against the Jews, just like what we going through today. So-called black people, what we going through today in America. People hating on us, trying to kill us, trying to do all evil upon us. But in the end, it didn't work out. It's not going to work out for our enemies. Like I said, you can't beat them, you might as well join them. See if the Most High will allow you to cleave to the house of Israel. The word is right. These are spiritual words coming off the book. They're alive. They're alive. Verse 6, and in Shushan the palace, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. And Parashandatha, and Daphon, and Aspatha, and Paratha, and Adilah, and Aramatha, and Parmatha, and Arishai, and Arithea, and Vazaatha, verse 10, the 10 sons of Haman, the sons of Hamayathia, the enemies of the Jews, slew they. So they killed Haman's children and everybody that was connected to him. But on the spoil laid they not their hands. They didn't even want the spoils of Haman. All right, let's keep going. Let's see. Now they doing a lot of slaughtering, so we're just gonna go on down here. Let's go to verse 13. All right. Let's go to verse 11. Esther chapter 9, verse 12. Salakia, verse 12. Almost finished here. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan palace, and 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition, and it shall be granted thee, and what is thy request further, and it shall be done. So he gave her total favor. What else you want to do? What else you want me to give you permission to do? Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hung upon the gallows. Okay? So she's, these are fierce Israelites, even Esther. Like, yeah, we want to kill more tomorrow. We want 500 more killed tomorrow. Like, take no captive. We want 500 more, even more. And we also want Haman's sons hung tomorrow. That's the love for your nation. Because these people were dangerous. They was want to wipe out your people. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hung Haman's 10 sons. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month of Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. So they slew another 300. But on the prey they laid not their hands. They didn't want none of their spoils. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 75,000. Look at that. 75,000. But they laid not their hands on the prey. Okay? On the 14th day of the month of Adar, on the Salakia, excuse me. We in Esther chapter 9, verse 17, on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a feast of feasting and gladness. Made it a day of feasting and gladness. And that is why we celebrate the month of Purim. That's why we celebrate the high holy feast day Purim. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the village that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month of Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another, sharing food, having a very glad day. And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly. All right, this is why it became an annual celebration. As the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another and gifts to the poor. There's a day of feasting and rejoicing and sharing. Happy you alive. Happy that blood was not shed among your nation. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pure, that is, lots, to consume them and to destroy them. Could be definitely the first portion, Purim now is a reverse of what they tried to do, and now we have the Feast of Purim. Now, when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he had devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hung on the gallows. Yeah, hang them. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of pure, just like I just said. Therefore, for all of the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which come unto them. Verse 27. The Jews ordained and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they will keep these 2 days according to their writings, and according to their appointed time every year, and that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. See? Keep it going. Then Esther the queen and the daughter of Abihail and Mordecai the Jew wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. So that's how we got the high holy feast day of Purim, and it's got to be kept throughout all generations. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according to as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed, and the matter of the feasting and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written. And the last 3 verses here in chapter 10, And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, in all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai, whereunto the king advised him, Salakia, advance him. Are they not written in the books of the chronicles of the king of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was next unto the king Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking wealth of his people, and speaking peace to his seed. All praises to the Most High Yahweh. By Shem Yahweh Shai. Now we understand how we have the Feast of Purim. And it is a great feast of celebrating and sharing, because it was the days that the Most High delivered our nation from the enemies, from trying to annihilate them. And so that's why we have the ones that we have now, the Feast of Purim, and also the Feast of Booths. You know, we can't forget about the Feast of Booths, because all of it has significance of why we celebrate like we do. And, a lot of people don't really understand. And, of course, the Feast of Booths, of course, that has to do with the Israelites sojourning and the Most High providing a place for them to live, of course. But when you get to the Feast of Purim, of course, it's about the deliverance, the deliverance of how the Most High intervened and saved the people of our nation's lives from being destroyed, and used it, Queen Esther, for such a time as was it during that time, raised her up, and she had the courage to say, if I perish, I perish. And the Most High annihilated the enemies, O wicked Haman and his seed, and gave Esther favor in the eyes of the king Ahasuerus, who was a heathen. So that let us know we also have to be careful in what we say and what we do, because there could be a heathen, of course, that the Most High will use to give our nation favor, to save our nation lives. So we want to be able to be watchful, be vigilant, and be wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove, and use wisdom, because it could be some heathen that the Most High will use their lives to be a blessing to our nation, to save much alive. So that is what we have, the joy, the gladness of the Feast of Purim, a very high holy day. And we want to thank the Most High for giving us our own personal, special, high holy day, that we can rejoice and be glad in our own culture, in our own nation, among our own people, to share and be glad among each other of what the Lord has done. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. May the Most High bless you. Continue to read the book of Esther. And as we prepare ourselves for a grand high holy feast day of the Passover, may we continue to get ourselves together and prepare. And may the Most High bless us. Until next time, Shalom.